Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 25 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels from Sandusky, Ohio, and I'm thrilled that my guest is able to join us this morning. He was the number 2 pick of the Brisbane Bears in the 1992 AFL draft, ultimately playing 76 games over the course of his 8 years between the Bears and the Lions, as well as the Hawks. And after his time in the AFL, he shifted his focus to American football, to gridiron, and in 2007, along with a friend, John Smith, he created ProKick Australia. And if you are a fan of the NFL or college football, then you are well versed in the significant contribution that this gentleman has made to the game that you love. I would like to welcome Nathan Chapman of ProKick Australia to the podcast. And sir, it's an absolute pleasure that you're joining me this morning. Welcome.
Oh, no, thank you. Love to be on board and talk all things footy. That's something we're passionate about.
Terrific. Yeah. And football. I mean, this is I'm a big college and NFL fan myself as well. So this is a great crossover episode, as they call it in television. Now you spent 8 years as an AFL player, and what were some of the greatest memories you had when you were playing?
Yeah, I think professional sport's an interesting one when you get out the back end of it. Sometimes it's pretty intense, while you're living it at the time, and being able to step away and at some stage and reflect on it. Your memories about what's the best thing is probably changed a few times, but I've got a few memories of playing my first game. Is obviously something that I'd strive for and trained hard for as a young fella, coming up through the ranks, dreaming that I'd get an opportunity to play one day. So your first game's always pretty special. I remember my first goal, my first 6 points that I kicked, and I think one of the memories that sticks with me is probably family members coming to a game and sort of seeing a big banner or a sign in the grandstand, just with my name and number on it, saying, we wish you well and have a great game, and we love Chappie, that type of thing, from my younger brothers and sisters. So they're probably moments that really stick with me, as opposed to accolades or anything like that, which I didn't.
At this early point in the interview, I had a slight glitch with my recording software and transitioned to a different platform, and we pick up the interview at that point right here. You were talking about how much you enjoy having your family there, up in the stands with the signs and that type of thing, and that has to be something that's absolutely thrilling. And
so it was pretty cool, and we'd played North Melbourne, played a really, really big fella at the time, so I just remembered running out there for the first time, which was, what a great experience to look back on.
And that stadium is just, is so much larger than anything we have here in the States. It's just, in terms of the footprint, we've got stadiums that are comparable in terms of seating capacity, but just the footprint of that stadium, it's so much larger than anything that we have here. That, all that talk about, them bringing a game, Essendon and GWS here next year to play somewhere. It's going to have to be played in a park somewhere, because we don't have a stadium that would fit a footy field. We don't have that.
Yeah, pretty big when you compare the two fields, to get something. But they'll squeeze it in somewhere.
Yeah, I hope so. Someday I'm going to make the trip there to actually get to see a game. But when you hung up your boots after your 8 years, you were not done as a competitive athlete, and you played. I did some reading. You played a couple years at the level below the seniors, it looked like, and then you decided to go on and try American football. What gave you the inkling or the urge to want to do that?
Well, I was 25. I was 25 when I'd finished professionally in the AFL, and then when I'd played in the sort of the local football, which we won a premiership in our second year in that, for Mount Gravatt, under a coach, Danny Craven, who I'd played with in my earlier days in Brisbane. And I just knew there was something else I had to do. I just felt like there was something else. And
Okay.
so at 25, 27, what was I going to get my mind active? I needed the rush again. It was that
Okay.
feeling of being around top level sport or a club or something. I just knew I wasn't done as an athlete, and I felt like I had something to give. So in essence, to be honest, it could have been any sport. I just had to do something. I'd even tinkered with trying to start playing golf, and I was an okay golfer. I thought, well, hey, heck, maybe I should just, if I do this and practice like this for the next 4 years, can I get myself to get on some, some type of event, tour, something like, I really thought about long and hard about
right.
dedicating time to sport again, whatever that may be, just to try and play at the top level. So turned out that kicking a ball was one of those options.
Okay, so when you found yourself playing, I read that you did the punting duties as well as the kicking off with the local gridiron team that you were playing there. What gave you the idea? And again, your skill set was definitely good enough because a team did bring you in for a tryout. But how did that happen? How did you go from playing on a local team in a quite frankly a foreign sport to actually ending up in training camp? How'd that happen?
So that was a lot of late nights, a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, a lot of times kicking by myself down to the park, and that was 3 years worth.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, again, where I guess I got my first taste of it was I literally rang the local league, spoke to a young man called Stephen Box, who out of the whole league at the time in Queensland was the only one who'd said he'd come down and let's say show me what to do, but like, hey, here's a helmet and pads, this is what it looks like, here's a ball, start kicking. So Stephen Box and Paul Knight were the two guys that sort of ran the club there at the time, and another guy who were really welcoming. So it allowed me to sort of get a taste of it, even though it was cold winter, dark nights, and me just kicking a ball, not really knowing what to do, and that sort of got the taste of it, all while I was practicing and trying to send emails to America to get someone to take a look at me.
Because you did have somebody who was kind of a trendsetter there, because Darren Bennett had made the leap to the NFL about a decade or so before you made the attempt to, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little bit more than a decade.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
we went and saw him play. We're on a football trip in through the States, and we went to watch him play, and we got to have a chance to have a kick on the field. And I was relatively new. I was probably 2 years into my AFL career out of 8. So it was in the back of my mind that, hey, if I do enjoy kicking a football, this could be something I could do one day. But, you sort of put it to bed a little bit, just because you had to focus on what was in front of us. But certainly something I thought I'd do.
Okay. And when you made those phone calls and you made those contacts, you got here, what was the experience like when you came to training camp? And I know that that Green Bay, because you ended up having in training camp with the Packers, and if I'm not mistaken, Green Bay has one of the most unique settings, and you could argue that would probably the perfect place for somebody who was coming from the AFL experience, because Green Bay is it's almost like it's like a family experience in that community.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, for the year prior, I'd went to a kicking camp in the States with Ray Guy and Rick Sang to get some lessons, and then I travelled over there with my brother, came back, and then got fortunate enough to get a connection with John Dorsey, who was, I guess, head of scouting there at Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
He liked the film, was over
in the States, and they flew me up, long journey, had a kick, and it was really weird. It was, we probably kicked for an hour. It was a workout that sort of turned into just kicking a ball and having a bit of fun, and what can you do? And so that was pretty cool to then say, right, go and have a shower and come up into this I don't know, I guess a guest room. Had some food and sort of said, well, I would like to sign you. So to go there and be in that environment was a pretty quick, I guess, a whirlwind that happened really quickly.
I bet, yeah.
But again, as I'd spent more time there, you're right, the family atmosphere and, I guess the environment, the real country nature feel to it. But you knew the football environment was intense, but certainly very welcoming, and the people, and it was exhilarating to get back into that format and know that you could spend your time and energy trying to perfect your craft or get stronger, or you had a goal to work towards.
And what is really neat about Green Bay, and I'm gonna ask you about one aspect of it that I'm hoping you got to do, but Green Bay, the team is actually owned by the fans. I have relatives on my wife's side of the family who actually own shares of the Green Bay Packers. It, like a stock market kind of thing. It's very similar to like an AFL membership in a way, where you're helping to actually fund the operation of the club. I mean, because Green Bay doesn't have an owner per se; they have owners, lots of them.
No, and you'll probably really get a sense of that as well. I mean, everyone loves their team, but you certainly love your team if you've got a vested interest in it as well.
Exactly.
So it's such a big part of the community there. So yeah, you really did walk in and get a sense of the pride that the town and the people had for the Packers. It's actually amazing, and to think, I was there right at the end of, Brett Favre had a couple of years to go there at the time, but just wow. I can look back at those stories and just be gobsmacked that how blessed I was to be just in the same facility as some of these amazing athletes and tremendous performers.
And did you get to do the traditional bicycle ride? That that is just such a neat thing to see. I mean, that is just,
yeah.
And, for those people listening in Australia, can you explain that? Because you got to do it. I've seen it before, but you actually got to experience that.
Yeah, actually, it was so good and joyful too. Okay, so basically, the facility, the training where you got, I guess where you get changed, in the rooms, you've then got a 250-yard, maybe 300-yard distance to where the practice facility is, or the practice field. And so, everyone knows when training's on, so they all congregate outside the rooms, and they form a bit of a barrier along the wall, and young children from the area will bring their bicycle in, and they'll basically stand next to their bicycle and you've got to ride their bicycle from the training room across to the practice field, a few hundred yards, and they may get on the bike with you. They may have little bars that they can stand on the back. They might walk beside you and carry your helmet and your cleats or something. So, to be able to, these kids, their eyes light up and they'd be waiting for you. And generally, it changes some days, but the same kid might turn up the next day and you form this really cool, little bond with a young boy or a young girl who's lent you their bike. So to see a big 350-pound lineman, nearly popping the wheels of some, 12-year-old schoolgirl, her bike, it's amazing. But certainly I've got some pictures from that, which I absolutely cherish.
It is one of the greatest traditions, in sports here. And I imagine, as I'm learning about footy, there are probably very comparable things that happen in Australia that I'm hoping to uncover as I go about learning about the game. But for those of you in Australia, if you can probably find images of this on YouTube. But it is really a neat thing to see these kids interacting with the players. But John Dorsey was just recently the general manager of the Browns here in Cleveland, and he's not with the team anymore. But he helped to get the ship righted a little bit, get some quality players in here, and hopefully they're going in the right direction. But,
yeah. He's the old football journey of a player or a coach or a scout. You can be anywhere at any given time, and your journey can change.
Yep.
And what a interesting life you can lead where it takes you.
So you tried out with the club, and if I'm not mistaken, you got to punt in a couple of preseason games, correct?
Yeah, played, I guess, the intra club scrimmage at the start, which is the green versus white scenario, which was brilliant to think that 75,000 fans turned up to that. That was amazing. And then a couple of practice games after that. So what I didn't know at the time, as soon as I got there, it was March, April. I'd probably just been signed. There was a break. If you think of the timing, there was a break between in that April period. Obviously, they're out scouting for the draft.
Right.
And so I'd been signed, but I hadn't really kicked for any of the coaches. I just had a workout and got signed. So turns out 3 weeks later, the NFL draft's on, and they drafted a young man in the 3rd round, a punter. And all right, 3rd round, sort of unheard of territory, isn't it?
Right.
So I just thought, see, over here, it doesn't matter in Australia if you get drafted. It doesn't matter if you're drafted in the 1st round, 3rd round, 7th round, whatever it is. It just all of the picks are the same. I was still naive towards all of the, I guess, the ongoings about what that meant. I didn't realise that from that day, I was probably doomed from day one, thinking, well, they've just paid him $1 million.
Yeah, that's exactly
and he's been
right.
picked up in the 3rd round. He's going to be the guy. But to be honest, I didn't look at it like that. I didn't know at the time, but I certainly didn't look. I thought, okay, oh well, let's go, game on. They've picked someone up. That's just a normal daily, I guess, an occurrence in the AFL world. So I just thought, got someone to beat out. That's pretty cool. And went about my business. But so 3rd game in, had a couple of ordinary kicks, which probably allowed them to say, "Oh, that's not going to work," and moved me on. So it's there was a bit more to it, but in essence, was pretty short-lived in that sense.
You did not end up making the squad, and again, if a team drafts a punter in the 3rd round, that punter is going to be on that team. Because or even like with Michael Dixon, if I'm not mistaken, he was drafted in the 4th round, was he not? I think
he was in the. If I get this right, sorry, I think Michael Dixon was. I think if Michael Dixon was in the 5th round, then
5th round, okay,
he might have been in the 4th.
Okay, if they're in that position, they're going to be making the team, because otherwise the person that made that pick is going to be looking for a job somewhere else down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so
well, and unfortunately, and it was sort of weird at the time. And the young man, BJ Sanders, he was out of Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously had a great season, did really well. Probably wasn't kicking the ball that great himself. And that season they actually kept him on the roster and brought in a veteran, Brian Barker, I think it was, to sort of play the year, just to give BJ a chance to keep developing. So it was a big pick for him to go in the 3rd round.
Right.
To then have the Packers carry 2 active punters on their roster, which was again unheard of. So
exactly.
Although it was, that's just the way it was. So we carry on, which led me to something else, which was great.
Which we're going to get into here. Yeah. So you had this this instance where you tried out with the Packers and that didn't work out. Now, I'm assuming you came back to Australia at that point in time. And how did the whole idea of ProKick Australia come to fruition? Because you founded this with John Smith, who I believe kicked in the CFL, correct?
Yeah. So Johnny, I'd met Johnny through a a mutual friend at the time, and I was sort of commuting between states. Well, when we got started, and I tried the next year. Sorry, so gone from Green Bay, got let go. Thought I'd try again next year. Came back to Australia, and went back, had a workout at the Bengals, and then had a mini camp at the Bears.
Okay.
Didn't get signed, didn't get a contract. And then it was sort of, look, I'd been to America once. I then tried at Green Bay. Then the next year I was over again. And because there was no real guidance as such as to what to do or what you should do next or how to do it better, I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm not gonna make it. It was expensive, ran out of money, had a wife and children, and it was like, okay, hey, about time to pull your head in, you old man. Just pack it up, and get a real job type scenario. So when we come back, that was when I'd sort of met John, and through a mutual friend at the time, and the idea and concept of, hey, listen, there's plenty of guys who can kick in Victoria, in Melbourne, and in Australia. I think there'd be a lot more successful people go across there if they were guided about how to do it better, and that's where it sort of started.
Okay, and this, I'm assuming you did not have a facility to start off with. You were finding whatever open soccer field or cricket grounds you could find to bring people out there. So how was the training perceived? When you first, how did you attract your first clients, if you will, to say, hey, why don't you come try this?
We laugh about that all the time. Like, this is such a big part of the story. We sent out some flyers and invited people to come down and have a kick, and we got 3 applicants. We had four people turn up on the first trial. We signed 3 of them to the program. One was Thomas Dydnam, who we ended up putting at Portland State. One was Alex Danaki, who we put at the University of Hawaii, and the other one was Jordan Berry, who actually is now still currently in the NFL at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So to think from one of the first 3 guys that we'd signed to our program, one of them is still in the league, which is a tremendous journey. But, from walking into parents' houses and say, hi, listen, how would you like to hand over your son's academic future and give it to us? We'll send him to college in America. We're going to teach him how to kick. And they're going, oh, great, yeah. So how long you been doing this? Well, about that. We're just starting it. We know we can do it. We think it's a great idea. So to think that we had to go and convince people to join up and do it, and then on the flip side, we had to convince coaches that it was a good idea to take a skinny Australian kid to be their punter who's never played the game before. So we had so many hurdles to jump through.
I can imagine.
It was crazy.
I can imagine. That is, I mean, you literally transformed the game here in the United States. You've changed it, and I don't think it's going to change back. I mean, I read your website. You have players here that are in the States who are helping to to train people here in the States as well. The same methods that you're using. So yeah, it did. So did you have a lot of doors slammed in your face?
The toughest. Who was going to take a phone call? Half the time you would ring, the coaches wouldn't recognize a really weird number on their phone when their cell phone rang, and it would say, extra numbers. You sort of think, hang on, what's this about? And you don't pick up. You think it's a spam call, and you don't answer it. So for coaches who didn't know me, didn't know who I was or who we were or what we were about, see a random phone number come up on their cell phone, we had to ring and ring and ring. We had to spend night after night after night for year after year in the middle of the night just to find a time that the coach might pick his phone up and knock doors down that way. It was a grind. It was, 4 hours sleep every night just to try and be available in case you've got a coach on the line to talk.
The time difference thing, I understand that because it's pushing 8 o'clock in the evening here. So yeah, I can imagine how tough that was to get that first connection. And now that you're having the success that you are, I imagine the coaches are contacting you and saying, who have you got next?
It's still both. We still have to contact coaches who are new to special teams roles and maybe haven't dealt with this before, and we've got, I guess, we'll call repeat clients who have dealt with this before, and I guess it's their job to find out what's available. So, who have you got? Who's coming through the program? Have you got anyone who might be able to fit this level or this school? And so over many years, it just spreads its wings a little bit to the contacts and networks that you make to be able to, now sometimes if we can't reach a coach, we might have a different coach be able to, let them know that we're going to give them a call. And that's obviously how networking is, to say, hey, listen, we've got a good product. If you're interested in looking at it, let's have the conversation. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say you're fine, you don't want one, and that's okay. But we feel like we got some runs on the board to be able to sit down and have a good coach to coach discussion about how we can help them.
So, now that that you've got this, I guess you could call it a pipeline of athletes that are coming in. What type of player today comes to your program? What specific type of footy player is an attractive candidate for your program that you think you can then help to get trained and then help find a spot playing collegiately?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got all of the same academic issues that we've got to get through. So we've got, what do we feel like? Every year we can't dictate who comes through our doors or who is interested. Now it's a case of someone's heard about American football or punting. They're looking for a bit of a change in their lifestyle at the time. They may not be playing football. They may not be playing good football. They just, a bit stale and want to try something new. Once they get in touch, we get all sorts. We get shapes and sizes, heights, weights, ages, you name it. And now location, across the globe, there's people sort of emailing, asking about, what does it take to do it, or can we come and train with you, etc. So there's a lot of things that have now opened up. But the way we sort of see it is as we keep producing players to the US, we've got to make sure that we continue to raise the level and requirement or expectation, or just raise the bar. And so then the footballer or the punter needs to be more athletic. Well, it's not just kicking a ball. Can you do 4 or 5 different kicks? Are you now athletic? Are you strong? Can you tackle? Can you throw? So we're trying to continually develop them as athletes to, so they've got more tools in their kit bag, just so that, we're, again, our main focus for a number of years was we're going to bring the importance back to punting, and we're going to make coaches want to know about punting and want to be involved in special teams, because a good punter can flip the field and change a game.
Exactly.
And so, the many years of, the punter is not a footballer, and who cares? They'd only come on the ground a couple of times. Yeah, actually, well, it can be. You can. I bet you care when it's a really close game and you're backed up in the end zone and you need a good kick. I bet you care about it then. So
absolutely, yes.
So if we've sort of kept that motto and theory about bringing that importance back, we'll raise the expectation of our players. So who we invite into our program, the level just keeps improving.
So how long does your average athlete that comes into your program, how long are they with you?
It can vary. It can vary, but it depends on. Look, there's a lot of timing. You can go to America in January or July, basically.
Right.
it depends on how good you are when you start. What's your when did you, it's no season with us. You can join our program in January, April, August, December. That doesn't matter.
Okay.
So it's sort of dictated by what's your starting level, how well you pick it up, and then when the recruiting cycle and when then the school needs you. So we'd like to think that we can do what we need to do technically within 12 months.
Okay.
To make you, and then it's sort of where it fits in that recruiting cycle is that 12 months might be 10 and you've joined in February and you leave in January the next year, or you might be in February and the school needs you the following July and then you're there for 14, 15, 16 months type scenario. So, that can vary a little bit, but we'd like to think that it takes 12 months for you to, what we'd like to say, come out the other side of our program really confident and consistent.
Okay, that is impressive. And I'm assuming they're possibly taking classes maybe or doing studying, or I saw in the interview that I looked at that there were kids who were working as well as they were going through this whole process. But have you worked exclusively, from Australia? Because we're going to get into one other individual that I saw in the news actually just today. But in terms of athletes coming out of Australia, have you worked exclusively with footballers, or have you ended up having some people who possibly played rugby as well that have tried to do this?
Yeah, a bit of both. We've had basketballers come across to maybe kick the ball. Rugby, absolutely. Soccer players and Aussie rules. So, any sport. We've had rowers. We've even had rowers who, might have played a little bit of local footy, but had been across and were involved in rowing. So, we had a young man who's now at Toledo, Bailey Flint. Bailey was a defensive end, went to high school, a Melbourne Australian kid who went and did some time at a school in the US in high school and was playing defensive end, and he came back and was about to go to junior college as a defensive end. And we said, listen, you can kick a ball. How about you stay here and we teach you how to punt? And he'd never really grown up playing football or anything. So,
wow. Okay.
And now he's at Toledo doing a great job and doing a really good job. Probably, actually, he's a great actor too, and he's got some things ahead of him which are fantastic. But
terrific.
Yeah, all sports. We just got to see what have we got to work with and how long is it going to take to finish and put some finesse on the student.
I'm about an hour east of Toledo is where I live, so I get to Toledo quite a bit. You've worked with all kinds of different athletes, and I saw an article today that you actually have your first Irish player who has signed and received a scholarship to go play at Georgia Tech. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, and that was sort of, I guess things sometimes happen. You get surprised about how things happen sometimes. John Smith happened to be, we got an email from a young lad, David Shanahan from Ireland. And I guess, it's a bit hard to sort of say, well, do this, come down, have a kick, send some film. And it just so happened that John Smith was in the UK at the time. Where he's from. He's from Manchester, and he was back at the UK just around the same time as we got that email. And he actually took a trip out to visit David and his mum, I think, in Ireland, and had a kick and basically said, good on you, son, you've got a leg. You should come and join us in Melbourne. And to his credit, he did. So, if John hadn't have been in the States, in the UK at the time, that may not have happened, which may have, not say put out the fire of David coming over, but it might have made it a little bit more difficult for them to take a chance and come to Australia at the time. So, look, really good lad, very, very high academics. That's why Georgia Tech was a good school for him as well.
It's a great school, yeah.
And he comes from a Gaelic football sort of rugby background, so he was used to kicking a ball and being on the move and all that. So he's got work to do, and that'll be a January type scenario. So
Terrific.
He's got a lot more time to work after at the same time.
Okay. Now, you know, when we talked off air before we started, you mentioned what you approximated the number of athletes that you have playing Division I football right now. Can you share with the listeners just how many inroads you have made into this game, and how much of an impact you're actually having on this game?
Yeah, okay. I believe this year we'll have between 72 to 80 Division I punters active in college this year. I believe we've done 140 scholarships over the years, and we've got currently got 5 guys in the NFL on rosters.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
So, and we just look. It's that war of attrition. We're just going to keep pushing and training guys to be better and demand they get the best out of themselves. And if we do that, then and as more opportunities open up, that just creates more awareness, and then more guys. We do look. This is so much about kicking, but to be honest, we really do consider ourselves an academic program who just happen to play sport along the way and kick a football. We make sure, I believe 98% of our guys have all graduated. We need them to graduate. We want them to graduate and think about their academics. There's no surefire plan of success and guarantees that you'll ever play at a professional level in any sport.
Right.
And make money out of it. So we really emphasise the education, so that you can set the rest of your life up, through getting involved in educating yourself with whatever you want to do. So that's our main focus. But to sort of think that the numbers I guess they're getting bigger, and one day I'll fix my website up and actually put the true numbers on there. But I've got other things to do.
I think you just answered the question I was going to ask you now, but what do you see as the most satisfying or gratifying thing that you take away from this job? What's the thing that you look at it with the most pride?
Pretty much, look, it's graduation time in the US, okay, and we're seeing our players and students who've either they're in their robes and their hat, and they got their the sashes on, and a document in their hand saying they've just graduated and got their degree in whatever. Sometimes they're getting masters degrees, and they're going on. We get a lot of students into our program who in Australia probably lose their way a little bit about what they want. Sport, do they want to do university? Where are they at just in their life? Sometimes they've been a bit disappointed through their sporting career and had injuries, so they couldn't perform the way they wanted to be. We've had guys who were doing trades and were just digging holes and doing apprenticeship plumbing or woodwork or something like that, and now they're at university getting degrees and masters at really good institutions and playing football in front of 20, 50, 100,000 people. So to see the turnaround and the full circle of their journey and see the smiles come back on their faces, that's probably one of the things that we get the most pleasure out. It's not about a particular university, how great we've got someone there. No, it's knowing that they come out the other side with great friends. And now we're in the cycle where, Jordan Berry and, they're having their first baby, and, Cameron Johnson just got married, and, Mitch Wisnowski, they've met their life partners, and they've got children. Keith Ruzak at Eastern Kentucky, started a life now with his wife in Kentucky. Like these the journeys that these guys are on now, just seeing them come out the other side as men, pretty much go in as boys really and come out as men and have really set their lives up, and hopefully seen them being really happy. That's probably where we get a kick out of it. Again, the football's fun, no doubt, but seeing them happy in life is probably one of the bigger points.
Yeah, they're having to work at it, but you're helping them to reach an opportunity that otherwise they may not have been able to find. Now, that's terrific. That really is. Now, I watched an interview that you did a few years ago with ESPN here, and I'm going to link to the interview in the show notes, where you said something to the effect that within 10 years, Australian punters are going to be dominating the game, and they'll be better than American punters. I think that is safe to say that that's happening.
Well, that was really interesting because interesting old Gene when he put that question to me, and he actually asked me the question twice because I didn't answer it the first time, and he asked me again on air. It was, do you think Australians are going to be better at kickers or punters than the Americans? And I didn't answer it because I thought, no, I'm not here to stir the pot. And then he asked me, well, there's like a 30-second pause. I think he was waiting for me to answer. I'm like, I'm not going to answer this. And then he asked me again. And I said, all right, yeah, I'll go down there. All right. Well, within 10 years, I believe we will be. So I must send him a little message, and I'll go find out how many years ago that was now, so that I can see if we're on our way. But look, again, it's really funny. It's not us versus them. We'll help anyone. We'll help anyone who wants to learn. Our joy is in the teaching. Doesn't matter where you come from. There's no we're better than you. There's absolutely none of that. We're good about the information. We just want people who want to get the most out of themselves to, and be around that like-minded and type of person. So I think if there's anything we've done by producing a number of guys for the US is we've made the competition being anyone who punts need to be better and work harder.
Right.
This is not it's not a given. It's not, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go to high school and then college and it's just going to be, no, I've got to work hard at it. It's a big industry. The scholarships are valuable. Education's valuable. And if it's a part of what you need to do to work harder, then it makes the position better. And if the position's better because there's a lot of good competition, everyone wins. You push yourself, you learn lessons in life, and about how to work hard at your craft and do things that push you to the next level, which then in turn may help you in your working life or your relationships or anything like that down the track. So, again, really, it's just about the emphasis on working hard to get the best out of yourself.
Okay. Now, I had just a couple of other things that I wanted to touch on before we wrap this up, and I it really never dawned on me before I really started watching footy, but does it make you cringe a little bit when you hear commentators talking about the punters being rugby style punters?
It sort of used. It probably did a while ago, because I don't think they knew any different.
Okay.
And to be honest,
That's
probably
fair.
To be fair, the style of kick that was being done was probably more a rugby style of kick.
Okay.
Okay. So the movement was probably more in tune with a rugby kick, and there was probably guys who played rugby who were taking the punting, which sort of gave it that name. Once we showed them the difference between a rugby style of kick versus a Aussie rules style of kick.
Right.
It takes time to change people's habit in words and perception about what they say. So I think, with the inclusion of, all of the amount of sport you can find on TV, and now with a number of Australians in there, I think the commentators now actually fully have digested the difference between the two,
Okay.
and accordingly say that. But
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, they can call it what they want.
Right.
It doesn't change the fact. If you're there and you're doing it, it doesn't mean, it doesn't change the fact about what they say. If your result's good, as I say, if your result's good, it'll end up on Twitter, and if your result's poor, it'll end up on Twitter, and we'll know about it either way.
Well,
so, whatever you call it.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not gonna. Yeah, I won't bring up There's a, and I didn't even realize that this young man was Australian. But there was the Blake O'Neill instance at Michigan. I did not realize he was Australian until I watched that interview with you, where he had a muffed punt there, and it was just I felt, I'm an Ohio State fan, but I felt terrible for him. But it's
you probably can't call it a muff punt because he didn't actually get the punt.
Well,
the
true.
Poor bugger. It was more like a side throw.
Yeah, it didn't look like it was an improper disposal, is what it was.
Yeah, and you know what? He handled that so well. And
yeah.
To his credit, and I guess if there's a lesson in it for people in sport, is you just got to move on. It's been,
right.
People talk about it, and there's a loss of a game, and sometimes there's a win. And here's the thing: you can go from highs and lows really quickly in sport, and in a lot of factors in your life. At the start of the game, he had an 82-yard punt, which was the longest in Michigan history or something.
Right.
And at the end of the game, he dropped the ball, went to pick it up, and he didn't think too much of it. I was like, okay, let's go back to training and get on with the next one. Like, it's a really mature attitude to go.
Yeah.
You're going to have ups and downs. These happen. Okay,
yep.
It ended up being pretty good television for half the people, and not very good television for the other half. It depends on which side of the fans you look for. But
exactly.
Yeah, it's a real lesson to just know that there's going to be ups and downs, and sometimes you'll end up square. At the end of the day, you'll end up pretty square. You'll have a lot of good moments and a lot of moments. Hey, his 82-yard punt, he may have well have just kicked that by. If he had to kick that 40, Michigan or Michigan State might have scored on the next play after that, and then Michigan State made 12 points. You just never know how
that's a great point. Yeah. Now,
going to be a part of.
Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on with you was that you're also, besides running ProKick, you are also working as a coach with the AFLW Tigers as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
whoa. What a absolute joy to be able to do that. It's actually been a real pleasure. Being a part of the women's program, and again, it's a part of that process that I really enjoy about the learning, and they just love to absorb information, and because the girls just want to get better at it. Their skill level has grown dramatically over the last few years,
right?
And they
exactly.
just want to be better at it. I got invited into the program from who's now my boss in Kate Sheehan, and just her passion for the program and the girls really sort of stood out as to why I guess I entertained it at the start, but.
I didn't watch a lot of the AFLW. I have the app here in the States where I can watch all of the games, but I watched a few games here and there, and it is just to me a societal shift in Australia, because it's been embraced by all of the young girls who are who've spent years watching the AFL, who now have somebody else to look up to emulate, and it's you hope that this league survives the COVID-19 and the lack of income with the league and such, because there are some of the images of these little girls that are at the games are just are grab you because it's something that they can latch onto.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, hey, and Aussie rules is such a great sport. Yeah, it's athletic, it's movement, jumping, kicking, punching. There's all of these different aspects to it, which are such athletic movements, and to have self-awareness, and so it creates so many good skill sets in an athletic point of view, which is great. And as I was saying before, the girls that improving, time after time or year after year, the skill sets are getting so much better. The game's cleaned up to be really enjoyable to watch.
Yeah,
it's fast, it's attacking, and it's like I said, an absolute blessing to be able to be a part of it. And we're in our off season now,
right,
but, right. With this COVID, it's sort of changed the way we train in the off season, etc. So we're went from one-on-one sessions to now being able to have some groups of 10 sessions. And, so we'll get young girls, Gabby Seymour, an up-and-coming girl who played volleyball a couple of years ago, is now 2 years in and performing really well just by doing the extra stuff, kicking-wise. I'll give the shout-outs to the girls, the Beck Millers, and just girls who just are like sponges in wanting to get better in everything that they do. I can't be there enough for them, because, again, if you show passion towards wanting to be better as a person or an athlete, then, hey, I'm in. Let's go. I'll give you everything I know.
And one of the I guess the more famous athletes who changed sports, and I'm not very familiar with netball. In fact, I'm not familiar with it at all. But Sharni Layton, who came over from that, who from what I've heard was a dominant netball player. I remember watching her last year. She had a tough time playing at the AFLW level, but this past season she became a dominant player because she had her skill set had improved so much. And you figure 5, 6, 8, 10 years down the road, I think the AFLW could be very much on par with the AFL in terms of the skill set of the athletes that are there. Because
So, it's and they because as they're getting better, and to be honest, a lot of these things come back to money. If you're getting paid well to do nothing but train and work on everything, but I guess you get fitter, stronger, you can spend more time on it. And as the shift has been over the last couple of years, where girls are now starting to get paid, but a lot of the time they've also got to go off and work full-time jobs and then turn up. So if you're an absolute dedicated athlete, as the environment shifts into the girls getting paid more money so they can do it, all year round.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I guess the skill set improved.
And I had sent out a note on Twitter and I had not heard back yet. I'm just mentioning it here, but somebody who I would love to bring on the show to interview is a Brisbane player, Jess Wushner, who I don't know if you heard what happened to her earlier this year, but to me she's kind of the toughest person on the planet. After, did you hear the story with what happened with her?
Oh, you go.
She works as a stevedore, and she actually, on like a Sunday evening, she got struck by lightning at work, and the next week she was back out. She was back out practicing. I'm shocked by that, and I don't mean that as a bad pun, but I'm just. But I don't want to take up any more of your time, sir. I truly appreciate you coming on and spending some time with me on here. This was a lot of fun. I would like to thank my guest, Nathan Chapman of ProKick Australia, for taking time out of your morning to sit down and talk with me. I'm thrilled that you took this opportunity. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, I appreciate you coming on, sir.
No, thanks, Craig. A pleasure. It got me out of doing the ironing and the vacuuming, so I'll probably have to get back in there and do it now, though.
So should we schedule one for next week then as well?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, sir, I truly appreciate it. I thank you. I'd like to thank Mr. Nathan Chapman of ProKick Australia for being my guest on episode 25. I hope you had as much fun as I did with this, Mr. Chapman. You had some great stories. Love talking about the Packers a little bit there with you. That was a lot of fun. If you're an NFL or an NCAA football fan and you found your way to this episode, I want to thank you for checking it out. And I invite you to not only check out other episodes of my podcast, but consider taking a look at footy itself. The league is going to be restarting on June the 11th, and there are going to be games each week on FS1 and FS2. And if you want to check out the game before the restart and look at some classic games for just a couple of bucks, you can do that. The Watch AFL app, which I've put a link in the show notes, is offering their entire catalog of games, including the top 50 games of the last 30 years or so, as well as every AFL and AFLW game going back to 2017. And all of their 2020 daily programming. AFL Tonight, which is very similar to like NFL Live, that type of thing, for $2 a week for the next few weeks until June the 11th, until the season kicks back on, and then they'll go back to their regular price. But if you want to dip your toe in and see what it's all about, I'd strongly encourage you to do that. Don't forget, while you can find all the episodes of this podcast at ayankonthefooty.podbean.com, you can also find it on your favorite podcast provider. Now that you've listened, I would love it if you'd consider giving me a review on Apple Podcasts. It lets me know what I need to work on and what I'm doing well. And it lets the podcast host know what you think of the show. And it will hopefully help bring some other people to the show as well, which, by the way, you could help with that as well by sharing this podcast with your friends and family. Remember, you can also reach me at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com, as well as on Twitter at @yank_on, and on Facebook and Instagram at @ayankonthefooty. I'd like to thank Mr. Joseph McDade for 2 pieces of his music that I'm using in this episode. Mr. McDade's created some fantastic music. I'm using the pieces of Elevation and Backplate. I went back with Backplate instead of Winter's Mist now that the season is getting ready to ramp up again. You can find his music at josephmcdade.com.music. Again, Mr. McDade, thanks so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for listening, because without you, I'm probably not doing this. I cannot thank you enough for tuning in. I went over 4,100 downloads of my podcast last week, and I'm amazed by that. I truly appreciate that. I've now had people in 21 countries and 36 states here in the United States listen to the show. I'd love it if you'd share it with your friends. And folks, we are less than 2.5 weeks away from footy starting again by the time this comes out. Okay? And keep in mind that while many of us are fans of our teams deep down, we're fans of a game that we all love, and that's the game of footy. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. I ask that you consider sharing this podcast with your friends and family. Retweet the posting that you see online. Send a text message to your friends. I'd love it if you would do that. And don't forget, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I'll catch you later. This has been episode 25 of A Yank on the Footy. Don't forget that you can reach me at yank_on Twitter or at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at A Yank on the Footy. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening, and I would love it if you would share the podcast with your friends and family. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.